So I just got wind of this very ridiculous article that was in the Daily Mail today about the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, and Harry and Meghan. Apparently, some, I mean, I don't want to say an idiot, but some kind of idiotic article was written, certainly, even if the person is not an idiot, that basically tries to pin Harry and Meghan to this sex abuse scandal in England that dates back to the 1970s, apparently at least a decade before Meghan and Harry were born. It certainly comes as news to me that Harry and Meghan were friends with Justin Welby. I mean, this man is an archbishop, so they certainly don't sort of, hang out, the way they would with their BFFs as a general rule. At least I don't think so. People don't usually hang out with their pastor and their archbishop. A and B, my sense was never that Harry and Meghan were on, this man's best friends list. I mean, as I said in a video a day or two ago, when Meghan told Oprah that she and Harry had been married by the Archbishop of Canterbury in advance of their nuptials in Windsor back in 2018. He basically made her look like a liar by failing to back her up. So I was not aware that they were friends, but some idiot wrote a very idiotic article in the Daily Mail trying to pin Meghan in particular to this mess. I mean, it sounds to me that that person listened to my video. They must have listened to my video, and I wouldn't be surprised, and wanted to just come up with something idiotic and stupid just to be contrarian, because that's just so stupid. How Justin Welby fell under Harry and Meghan's spell as Archbishop of Canterbury resigns over ignoring prolific sex abusers' crimes. How his friendship with the Sussexes raised questions about his judgment. How completely asinine. I mean, these events, to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, occurred, as I said, back in the 1970s and 80s, well before either Harry or Meghan was born. But I mean, speaking of friendships, I mean, the Archbishop of Canterbury, to my understanding, is the head of the church of, well, he's not the head of the church of, he's sort of the acting head of the Church of England, but the actual real head of the Church of England is the British monarch, Queen Elizabeth, King Charles, Prince William, soon to be, assuming he ever assumes the throne. So I would imagine that if you're saying that Harry and Meghan are friends with Justin Welby merely because this man married them, back in 2018, what would you say of his relationship with Queen Elizabeth and with King Charles? I mean, he's described as King Charles' right-hand man, King Charles' spiritual advisor. He spent countless hours with both King Charles and Queen Elizabeth in his capacity as the spiritual leader of the Church of England. I mean, because King Charles and Queen Elizabeth, again, are his bosses. I mean, he is second to both King Charles and Queen Elizabeth, and he spent a lot of time, this guy Justin Welby, in both their companies. They seem to all get along great. And as I said, when it was time for him to back up Meghan to say that, yes, it's true that he had married them in their back garden, he did not do so because of, I believe, his deference to the British monarchs, then Queen Elizabeth, and after King Charles. But the idea that someone is going to be so barefacedly idiotic as to make this kind of an argument in an article to suggest that because this guy, who again he's not BFFs with the Queen and King Charles, but certainly he spends an inordinate amount of time in their presence. He provides spiritual advice to them. There was a point even where I read that Prince William had offered help to the Archbishop of Canterbury, who suffers from depression. So William had been credited back in, I think, 2020 with providing, help and counsel to the Archbishop of Canterbury for his depression, right? I mean, if you want to talk about friendships, why aren't you talking about that, especially in light of the fact that William and Charles both have been accused of being slumlords in the UK, of being hypocrites, of milking the British public of millions and millions of dollars, of not paying taxes, of really taking more than their fair share of resources and assets and property taken even from people who are dead, from the grave even. And so, if we're going to talk about, Justin's judgment, I mean, what about that? I mean, talk about that. Why hasn't Justin advised, the king and his son to be more magnanimous and to be more generous and not to milk the people? I mean, you're going to talk to me about the fact that this man, was the officiating clergy who oversaw Harry and Meghan's very public wedding in Windsor as being the basis for bad judgment. I mean, it seems to me that that was his job. This is not a question of his judgment. This was his job. I mean, he didn't really have a choice in the matter in terms of whether he's going to marry this couple or not. I mean, that's what he does. He's the Archbishop. He marries couples in the cathedral. This has nothing to do with any kind of friendship that Harry and Meghan were having with this clergyman, right? But the idea that somehow Meghan and Harry are responsible for the clergyman's judgment prior to their very birth. I mean, these events that occurred, for which he is blamed for not telling the police and keeping silent for decades about the most prolific sex abuser in the history of the church. All of these things, if not, well, maybe not all, but most of these incidences occurred prior to Meghan's birth in 1981, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and Harry's birth a few years later, right? So it's just some idiot who desperately wanted to associate Meghan in particular, but also Harry to a lesser extent, to some kind of filth, and not wanting to lay the blame on where it belongs. I mean, then you wonder why the society's, is like this and why it continues to degrade, right? Because here you have a man of the cloth, right? This man is supposed to be the moral compass for the entire country. And he is sitting on a story like this where he is fully aware that there's a prolific sexual abuser in the church. And he doesn't tell anybody, right? And rather than spotlight that and hold this man accountable for his actions, they are trying to diverge attention from what this man did, the wrong he did, by trying to implicate two people who had absolutely nothing to do with this man's decisions and with his failures and with his sins, right? They're trying to, somehow rope Harry and Meghan in particular into something that has absolutely nothing to do with either Harry or Meghan, and to take away the accountability and the responsibility from this man of the cloth, who should be the spiritual advisor for all of this, the above, Harry, Meghan, the king, the queen, and everyone in that church, right? I mean, how do you, with a straight face, I mean, you're not on drugs, you are not drunk, you are not an effing whatever. How do you make such a statement in a newspaper and call this a newspaper? What in the name? What on earth is going on in the UK, in the UK media? You know what? I have to stop analyzing the UK media, honestly. I mean, as I have said before, I mean, they have a bunch of bottom feeders who, I mean, I don't think they went to journalism school. They couldn't have, right? But they're up there writing, stupidity. They're writing stupidity. And then I'm sitting here analyzing this stupidity, right? This man even coronated King Charles. I mean, he's like tight with King Charles. Is King Charles now therefore responsible for the abuse of the sexual abuse of these youngsters that this man covered up? As I said, this man resigned today, so it's not even an allegation, it's true. This man of the cloth, right? This man whose, moral compass is supposed to be bigger and more accurate than all of us combined. I mean, if that's even like possible, condoned with his silence and his failure to act the most prolific sexual abuse in the history of the church. And you're sitting there, this idiot at his computer at the freaking Starbucks with his coffee, trying to pin this on Meghan and Harry, who were not even born at the time. And they're calling this news. And then I'm sitting here analyzing this BS. I'm sitting here analyzing this BS. I think the problem is really me. See you in the next one. Take care. Bye.